Welcome to Sissygram Spicy Story channel. If you like my voice, then hit the like button and do subscribe our channel for regular updates. Today I come up with whole new content of story. So, now let's start the story. It started on a warm afternoon. My husband was out of town for work, and my stepson Maxim was supposed to be out with his friends. At least, that's what I had assumed. Maxim and I had always had a distant but polite relationship. He wasn't my biological son, and I tried to respect his boundaries as a teenager. Like most kids his age, he valued his space, and I didn't want to push too hard. Still, I secretly hoped that one day we'd form a stronger connection. As I went about my day, I remembered I needed to grab something from Maxim's room. Since he wasn't supposed to be home, I figured I'd quickly retrieve what I needed and leave. But when I opened the door, my world turned upside down. There he was, sitting on the edge of his bed, shirtless. Beside him sat someone I instantly recognized, a woman much older than him. My heart stopped as I took in the scene. It wasn't just that Maxim had someone in his room. It was who that person was. She was one of my friends. The way they were looking at each other was intimate, far too intimate to ignore. I froze in the doorway, the tension in the room so thick it was suffocating. Maxim jumped up, his face a mixture of panic and guilt, but before he could say anything, my so-called friend spoke. "This isn't what it looks like," she said, her voice trembling, her eyes wide with guilt. But it was too late. The damage was done. A knot formed in my stomach as a storm of emotions swirled inside me: anger, betrayal, disbelief. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded, my voice shaking as I struggled to keep control. Maxim looked down, avoiding my eyes. My friend stood frozen, her face pale, as if she were waiting for the ground to swallow her whole. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. How could Maxim, my husband's son, be involved in something like this? And how could she, someone I trusted, do this, and under my roof no less? "I didn't mean for this to happen," Maxim muttered, his voice barely audible, guilt etched across his face. I should have yelled. I should have demanded answers. But I felt too overwhelmed to react. My so-called friend stepped toward me as if to explain, her hand reaching out in a gesture of comfort. I recoiled instinctively, anger surging through me like wildfire. "Don't," I snapped sharply. "You need to leave." She hesitated, her face twisting with shame, but then she quickly gathered her things and left without another word. The sound of the door clicking shut behind her felt deafening. Now it was just Maxim and me, standing in the thick, suffocating silence of his room. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but the betrayal I felt was overwhelming. "Why?" I finally asked, my voice cracking. "Why would you do something like this?" He didn't answer right away. I could see the inner conflict in his eyes. He was just a teenager, caught up in something he didn't fully understand. But that didn't make it any easier to accept. The silence dragged on, every second feeling like an eternity. "I didn't plan this," he said finally, his voice low and filled with regret. "It happened. That wasn't enough. Not even close." But I didn't have the strength to push him for more details. I was too consumed by the whirlwind of emotions and the sheer disbelief of what I had just witnessed. Without saying another word, I turned and left the room, retreating to my own space to process the situation. For days, I couldn't shake the image from my mind. My thoughts were plagued with questions. How long had this been going on? Why hadn't I noticed anything? And most importantly, what was I supposed to do now? I knew I couldn't keep this from my husband, but the thought of telling him made me sick to my stomach. How would he react? Would he blame me for not keeping a closer eye on Maxim? Or worse, would he downplay the severity of the situation? Maxim stayed in his room for days, barely coming out and avoiding me entirely. He was clearly ashamed of what had happened, but I didn't know how to approach him, or if I even wanted to. The trust between us had been shattered, and I wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. Eventually, I realized I couldn't carry the weight of this secret any longer. One evening, after Maxim had gone to bed, I sat my husband down and told him everything. Every detail. He listened in stunned silence, his expression a mix of disbelief and heartbreak. I braced myself for his anger, but when he finally spoke, his voice was calm. Too calm. "I need to talk to Maxim," he said simply. That night, they had a long, private conversation. I didn't ask what was said, and my husband didn't offer to tell me. But I could see the pain etched across his face. He was devastated, not just by what had happened, but by the realization that he hadn't seen it coming. He felt like he had failed as a father, and that broke my heart more than anything else. In the days that followed, life slowly began to regain some semblance of normalcy, but nothing truly felt normal anymore. There was a tension between all of us, an unspoken understanding that things had changed forever. Maxim became more withdrawn than ever, and my husband and I struggled to find our footing as parents, as partners. But we were trying. We were all trying. Then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. Maxim came to me, his expression nervous and uncertain. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, his voice trembling, "for everything." I was taken aback by his words. He had been avoiding me for so long that I hadn't expected him to reach out like this. "I'm sorry too," I replied softly, my voice gentle. And in that moment, something shifted between us. It wasn't full forgiveness. There was still a long way to go, but it was a start. A small step toward healing the wounds we had all endured. The situation wasn't perfect. Far from it. There were still moments of tension, memories that resurfaced when I least expected them. But we were working through it, slowly but surely, trying to rebuild the fragile bonds that had been broken. As for the woman who had been involved, she was no longer a part of my life. I cut ties with her completely, unable to forgive the betrayal. But I realized that my focus needed to be on Maxim. He was young, still learning, and he needed guidance, not judgment. There are still days when the past feels like an unshakable shadow, but we're moving forward one step at a time. And sometimes, that's all you can do. Keep trying, keep hoping, and trust that the wounds will eventually heal. This is where the story wraps up. Share your thoughts in the comments below. For more stories like this, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I'll talk to you soon. See you next time.